All right, so we added all of our some seed data. Again, this is not something that we would expect for a new website to have, but we just wanted to have something so we look at before we get to all the CRUD capabilities. So let's actually get to CRUDing here. So we basically handle all the data side. So the database, the models, all that should be done. Next up, we want to get our URLs going. So that's usually what we start with here. So if I go to my project folder, which is named car app, I don't know what the naming convention was there. But here we want to add basically a pointer that says, hey, given, let's call this car shop. Not sure what to call it. Car shop will be my base. And we're just going to say, go look over in the app of cars and brands. .url, this needs to be in a string. And we also need to include that include function. So we import that. And we should get to go. All right, so I'm gonna get rid of this comment. It's kind of large. All right, so this is our project URLs. Again, we're just simply saying our app URLs are going to be basically dealing with anything that's prepended with car shop. That's just the base URL I chose. So we'll go with that. So given that, I'm going to go to my cars and brands app folder. Inside of here, we need to create the URLs file ourselves. That's not something that's provided to us. So urls.py. In our app folder, we're creating that. And then I'm going to copy and paste. Okay, nope, wrong file. My computer is lagging, so apologies for any type of difficulties. All right, so we got URLs. Throw those in there. Did not copy everything I wanted to. URLs, copy everything. I need to reboot a machine at some point. All right, we're in URLs. All right, drop all that stuff. We don't need any of the admin stuff here, so that can go away. Bye-bye. All right, cool. So now we need to start adding some paths for routes that we want to add. So in this case, let's go with just our homepage will be, or our landing page will be just car shop, and that'll list out maybe all the brands that are available to us. So here, I want to add the handler. So let's call this brand list page. And then the name for this will be brand list. I'm trying to think if I want this plural. Brand, no, let's keep it singular. I'll probably forget, but all right, so we're gonna have a list page. Also, we're going to have a detail page for each brand. So I'm gonna do that right now. And we'll start with this. So this will be slash, give me int, so brand, int, and brand ID. Again, this is a parameter that's going to be captured from the URL. I'm going to add an ending slash just because that usually causes me trouble. So we brand detail, and we'll call this the brand detail page. Okay, so we got two routes set up. Let's actually code up the views. Let's do it incrementally instead of doing everything at once. So here I need to include from cars and brands dot views imports. Give me everything from there. So that's import star. So brand detail page and brand list page are two route handlers I need to create. This goes in our views.py. So I'm going to go to my views.py file here.
You missed an S on the last page, Ankur.
Thank you. Views, that is the correct file. Thank you for catching that. All right, brand list page. So this needs to be a function. So def is our keyword. This takes in, again, every route handler takes in a request, even if we want to use it or not. And that's going to return a render of some page. So I'm going to kind of anticipate what I'm going to do. So request is the first parameter. Second parameter is going to be where your template file is sitting. I'm going to create a template folder. Inside the templates folder, I'm going to create a pages folder. And inside of that, I'll create the brand detail.html. And then I don't think there's any data I need to pass it right now. So I'll copy that. I can do this kind of quickly, but again, if there's anything you guys have questions on, please ask. Brand detail will, oops, this would be brand list. This is brand detail, pages / brand detail. Okay, so I'm going to need to create a couple of templates. Again, if you remember, inside your app folder. So again, when I say app folder, I'm referring to cars and brands, not the car app folder. I'm going to have to change that for a future cohort. But here, I want to create a new folder. It must be called templates because that's the default place Django will look for your template files. Inside of that, I'm going to create a new folder called pages. And this naming is flexible. I think typical convention is usually mirroring the name of your app folder, but you don't have to. In this case, I don't want to call it cars and brands. I think pages is good enough for my needs. And inside of that, I'm going to create my templates. So here, I'll create brand detail underscore detail.html. And then I'll also create brand list. So this is going to be our R part of CRUDing, which is just reading out data. So usually this isn't too cumbersome. Let me just, while I'm at it, create a base HTML. Again, we had some trouble with this earlier, but your base HTML file should sit outside of your nested folder. So in this case, my base.html is in my templates folder, but not in my pages folder. All right, so again, that can cause some issues if you nest it inside the pages folder. Might not work. I definitely know we had some trouble with that at some point. Okay, cool.
I feel like I remember at one point having 2 folders inside of the templates folder. I think that was for cohorts and students. When does it make sense to only have 1 folder inside of the templates folder as opposed to 2?
I think actually what you mentioned makes sense to me. So I should probably create a brand folder. I actually like that idea. So I'm going to change gears a bit. Apologies if you're trying to follow along, but yeah. So Morgan's question was, when do you create like multiple folders versus 1? That's a developer decision. Whatever you think provides the best file organization. In this case, I think, yeah, makes sense to break apart cars and brand templates. So I like that suggestion. So now I've created a brand folder with brand detail, brand list, and then my car folder will have likewise car templates. But because I changed my file paths, I need to go back to my views and make sure I have the appropriate folder name. So brand is what I called it. All right, so brand list, brand detail, cool. But yeah, again, it is subjective. So whatever you think provides best file organization, and I think in this case, we definitely should have multiple folders. All right, I'm gonna create a quick base template, nothing too extraordinary, but kind of nice to use templates just because it cuts down on how much code I had to write. So I'll call this main content. We'll do end block. And
Ankur, on that last Morgan's question, kind of how I thought about it, and I don't know if this is the right way to think about it. When you have a second nested folder, that's like your second CRUD set, right? Because when we did cohorts and students, our first normal paths in our URLs for the app was just cohorts, and then our second set was students. So when you have that second set, that's the second folder. That's kind of the way that I thought about it. Is that a good way to think about it? I think that's how Tom did it.
Again, it comes down to what you think makes sense. So I don't know, Guillermo, are you suggesting I just put my car folder inside of my brand folder, or is that?
Oh, no, exactly like you have it like that.
Okay. Yeah, again, I don't have a 100% answer. It's whatever you feel works best for your design. So base.html is what I'm extending. And hopefully you guys are familiar with what we're doing here. We're just creating a simple base template that's going to provide consistency between pages for us. And also we don't have to code as much. So now I can just add a main content. So block main content, because that's what I called it in my base.html. And of course I need to end my block. So let's not forget that, end block. Okay, so let's just put in some content here. So this is gonna be, I'm at my brand list page. So my goal here is to list out every brand that's in my database. So for that, I'm going to assume I'm gonna pass something relevant here. So we'll do a for loop for brand and all brands. We'll iterate over that. It's gonna be a for loop. We're gonna create some list elements because that's usually the best way to kind of list out a bunch of things. And then we want to make sure we end our for loop. Again, this is just a Jinja thing where we need to specify where our block ends. All right, so end for, we have a for loop. All right, this list can show some data. So here we might want to show the brand name. That makes the most sense to me. But we also probably want to link somewhere. So I'm going to wrap this in an A tag, and we're going to link to a brand detail page. So when they actually click on the brand name, they should be taken to a different page that shows them more information about the particular brand in question. So we're going to do href, and that is the attribute for A tag to kind of tell us where we want to go. In this case, we're going to use Jinja. So that should be percent signs. Again, this format, the syntax for Jinja is kind of a little wonky, but to make sure you can understand how to use it. Here we want percent sign curly braces, and URL is a function we're going to call, and we're going to call a brand detail. So brand detail, right? This is the route name. So I just want to make sure we're all clear. URLs, I've called this route brand detail, and that is what I'm referring to from my actual template file. So again, that name has matched this name. That is how it's going to find the appropriate route. Alternatively, I could navigate to this URL directly, but as we talked about, that is slightly less robust, because if I choose to like change my URL, well, then I'm going to need to go through all my template files and update URLs manually. Versus if I reference a route name, this route name I should never expect to change, so that even if I change my URLs, the route name will be able to still navigate to the correct place automatically. All right. So let's go back to my template. I have a lot of tabs open, which makes me a little anxious, but brand details we want to go to, but we need to go to a particular page based on the brand we're clicking on. So this is the parameter we're going to be passing in, brand ID, so I do brand ID, and this is going to be the first parameter that's passed, or we use kind of keyword arguments just to be safer, where I would say the brand ID parameter is going to have a value of the current brand we're working with, and its ID, which is a field available to all models. So again, you don't have to use a keyword argument here. If you don't, it's just going to be, like you're calling a function, and whatever is first is the first parameter you're passing. Either way, should give us the right thing. So now if I go back to my views, there was something I forgot. So my brand detail page needs to take a brand ID. Again, an important thing here, the name you provide here for your view handler must match your URL. So in this case, it's looking for some parameter called brand_ID, because I've named it such in my URL. So again, your URL namings matter, both your name, your route name that you give it, that's going to be dependent on what you call from your templates, and then the parameter name that you give inside the URL, that is going to be used by your views.py or your route handler. So in this case, brand ID is what I called it. So that's why I need to call this brand ID. I don't have naming flexibility there. All right, so a brand ID, that is something I'm going to need to pass to my detail page. So we can do that with creating simple dictionary. We'll say brand ID, or we want to pass the entire brand, not bad. So this will be a brand object. So we need to get a brand object from our brand models. So brand.objects.all or .get ID equals brand ID. Looks like I'm missing some imports, so let's actually make sure we do that. So from cars and brands.models, let's import. Let's just import everything. Kind of a lazy way to do it. Not always the right choice, as in if you have a large file, you might not want to kind of import everything. In this case, I'm just going to be lazy about it. Import everything so I get the brand model from my models. I've mentioned this before. Usually good practice to wrap this in a try-catch. You don't have to, but again, it's all about getting in the habit of writing safer code. Because if I somehow get a bad brand ID, like if the user manually goes to my URL and types in like brand ID 972, that's not going to find a brand object, and this will actually throw an exception. Now, it's not the worst thing in the world. Django actually protects us, as in it will take us to like a default error page. But I rather handle this so I know if something goes wrong, I have control over it. In this case,
Quick question for you.
Yep, please ask.
So looking at your brand list page function, when is it appropriate to use the, for this example, brands equals, capital B brand.objects.get?
So you're talking about line 10 versus my function up here?
Yeah, or I'm sorry, not get, objects.all.
All. Right, so I need to do that up here. So you're right, I missed this up here. Are you asking when I do one or the other?
No, I was confused because all of the examples that I saw previously had the .objects.all. I didn't see it here, so that seems to be a necessary step.
Yeah, I definitely won't need to pass all brands here, so that is something I forgot to do. Thank you, all brands. So again, for the brands list, we're just showing every single brand that's available in our database. We're gonna get that from our models or our database, pass that as our data, and that's gonna be our data we supply to the template page. So my data. Sorry, Morgan, I'm not sure if I answered your question or if I didn't quite get it, but was this what you're kind of going for, or do you still have a question about why we do get down here?
No, that answered my question.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you.
I didn't realize if there was something different or if it was just forgotten.
Nope. Yeah. So my brands list needs some data, else it's going to show nothing. So you're right. Yeah, I need to pass all my brands to my brand list page, and then my brand detail page can get one particular brand instance because we are trying to find one instance based on the ID. Given that we find it, we're going to render this template. So let's put that in our try block. In this case, we'll return maybe an HTTP response. So that's the easiest. And this will say page not found. Probably want a better error for production, but I'm gonna keep that there. Okay, so maybe we could also pass in E to show the error. Does that work? All right. So when we're on error, we'll just return an HTTP response to show something to our user. Again, Django will automatically show a 404 error in production, as in if you turn debug, let's go one sec, to my project. Again, slight detour. Okay, if you go to your settings file, you might have noticed or might have seen this somewhere. There's a debug equals true. Normally, when you're deploying a Django project, you're going to want to set this to false. That will kind of change some settings. So instead of seeing those error pages that we normally see, right? Like when I go to, if I go to a page that doesn't have a route for it, like if I refresh this, we normally see this like, yeah, oops. Sorry, let me fix this up. Okay. So normally we see these pages with like the yellow banner. This is not something what your user will see in production because that debug equals true is actually showing us these errors. When you set that to false, you'll see a different kind of error page here. You won't see kind of this detail, just to let you know. But we don't need to worry about that right now. So let's go back to our views. All right, so we're going to show that. All right, let's actually test this out. Let's see if this works or if I've forgotten a step, which is quite possible. So my base URL was car shop / nothing is going to go. All right, cool. Notice we get 3 brands. Obviously, nothing too descriptive here. Let me quickly change that. So brand list. I want to see an H2 tag that says all car brands. All right. Hopefully that looks a little. Oh, we need probably want to unordered lists. I guess this works without having a parent list item, which I guess is kind of news to me, but usually want to wrap list items with an actual list. So refresh that. All right, so notice that tabs it out. I think since I added that list, it actually adds that indentation. Not a big deal, but all right, cool. So we have Chevrolet, Lincoln, and Mazda. If we click on them, that should take us to the detail page. However, our detail page has nothing on it right now, right? If I look at my detail page, it's a whole lot of nothing. So let's actually quickly change that. I'm going to copy my list page just to have a starting point and save some time. All right, so our detail page is going to show a particular brand. So we're probably going to have brand.name. Let me kind of get some feedback here a little bit. Let's go with Tanya. Can you tell me where this brand value is actually going to come from, or why do I call it brand and not call it donuts? Like, what if I call this donuts? Let's say I want to call it donuts. What would I need to do to get this to actually work? I think you're muted. I'm not sure if you're talking or avoiding contact.
Oh, I'm sorry, Young.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I'm drawing a blank right now.
Gotcha. Again, donuts is a poor naming choice here, but again, this is just a variable. So if I wanted to call it donuts, which I shouldn't, but if I did, I need to go to my views and whatever I'm passing in with my data dictionary, the key value is what you're going to use in your template. So in this case, I get a brand object and I've called it brand in my, my views, which is fine. That's another variable. But whatever I call it, whatever the key I give it here is how I actually access that value in my templates file. So again, if I wanted to call it donuts, I need to pass in a key value pair with donuts being the key, and then the value will be whatever value I give it. So in this case, donuts would point to a brand instance that I got from the database. So if I called it donuts there, well, then I'm free to call it donuts here. So I could do donuts.name because each brand has a brand name, as also has a year founded. I forget my other fields, so it's like a gander. I also had an icon URL, so let's actually try to show an image maybe. So we have the URL, so that should make it easy for us. If I go back to my detail page, let's add an image tag, img, that has an src, and our src here is going to be curly braces, because this is Jinja. It's going to be donuts dot, what I call it, brand URL. That's not what I called it today. Icon URL is what I called it. So that should be icon URL. And I think that's all we need for the image. Probably want to constrain the width to make it reasonable. Let's make it 200 pixels. Hopefully that's enough. Okay, so again, donuts is the value name I gave it. Again, you can name it whatever you want, but we want to be sensible about it. So in this case, donuts does not make sense for this context. Brand is the most likely name you want to go with. So I'll rechange this to brand, but because I'm changing this to brand again, keep in mind, the way I'm passing it in is through my views, and this key value needs to match whatever value I'm referencing. So I'm going to change this back to brand because let's be better about our naming, right? Okay, cool. So we're passing in one particular brand instance based on the ID that we get from the URL. So a lot of steps here that kind of work seamlessly, it seems. But again, our URL has specified that whatever is put in after the brand / whatever, that's the ID we're going to extract into a value called brand ID, which will be passed to our brand detail page as brand ID. We use that to get that item and then render our page here. So if I save this, I think we should be good to go. Let's click on Lincoln. So I clicked on Lincoln. Cool. We got an image. We got year founded. I don't know if that's correct, but we're getting the actual detail here. So this is the read part of CRUD, which is generally one of the easier parts, but always get to get that first up and going. Let's get to the harder part. So this is going to be the create and the read. Sorry, create and the update. Those are usually the hardest part. So I'm going to do this sort of quickly, but stop me and ask questions as needed. So the first thing I'm going to do, since I know I want users to be able to create and update data, is I'm going to need to have a form. Forms are the way we get user input traditionally. So here I'm going to create a new file in my app folder and call it forms.py. Again, you don't have to create a separate file, but always get to organize your different pieces into appropriate places. Here I'm going to import from Django.forms, import model form. There you are. All right, model form just makes it a lot easier for us to accomplish this. We don't have to use model form. We can create a form ourselves, but I am not willing to do that just because it's so much easier with model form. So we'll do brand form, and here it's from model form. In the syntax here, we need a nested class, and it must be called meta. You don't have a choice there. You can name your form whatever you want to, but the inner class has to be named meta because again, just Django that's what Django expects. So we got to satisfy it. We'll do fields to specify what fields we want to expose. So here we'll do what we had. We had name for a brand. We had icon URL, and we had year founded. Okay, and then the actual model that it's going to reflect, as you might guess, is our brand model. So we need to import that from Django, from cars and brands, which is our app models. Let's just get everything. All right, so again, 4 lines of code that gives me everything I need for the form. Same thing with cars. So the car form, we'll use the car model. We had a name, we had a year And then we also had, what else we had? We had type. Do we have anything else? I can't remember my models. We had name, brand, of course, we need a brand. How could I forget? Forms. We had a brand in here. The ordering of this doesn't really matter. That's just the order the user will see on the form. So if I swapped a brand and you're founded, that's fine. It doesn't have to match like the ordering in my model. It's just going to be how we present the data. All right, so those are my forms. Again, took maybe like 45 seconds for me to kind of whip this up, maybe a minute, but pretty quick to use model form. Now that I have model forms,
I think you need brand on car, not on brand.
You are correct. Typing too quickly. Thank you. Let's put that at the end, just for whatever reason. Brand. All right, thank you for catching that. That would have caused me some trouble. All right, so now that I have those forms, I'm going to import cars and brands forms. Just give me everything from the forms. All right, so we did our list page or detail page. Let's get to our create page. So def brand creates, takes in a request. Oh, this is not JavaScript. We need to create some data. And this is where we get into get and post requests. So keep in mind that this route handler is going to handle both get and post requests. So let's kind of make that clear. I like to be as clear as possible. So let's do an if statement. If request dot method. Now, if this is a get, meaning they're just coming to our page like normal, that's going to be a get request. So let's be equal equals. For this case, we want to create a user form. So let's call that form. And this will take in a user, what is it, brand form. So I know I'm looking at the time, we're probably not gonna get to the nested CRUD part as much, but I know we should try to. So let's try to kind of get this out of the way. So let's do a create my data. We need to return a rendering. That's going to be taking a request, original request. Our template will be brand/brand form.html. HTML. We're going to want an action in here. Call that create. And then I need to pass my data. All right, so brand form, we're creating an instance of it and passing it to our data. So we're just doing it all in one line. Again, we could separate it out. Like we could store this in a variable and then pass a variable here, but that's not necessary here because we don't need to do anything with that. So this is the get case. Again, we're simply create a form and present that form on our page. However, if, do an else if the request method happens to be a post, something's wrong with my syntax here. I'm not sure what, but okay. I'm not sure what's wrong because I get this red squiggly, but I'm going to ignore it. If it's a post, we need to capture the user data. Now, again, this is something you just got to kind of remember. The request object has a dictionary called post. All right. When you submit a post method, this post dictionary will likely be populated with the values from the form. So this is a dictionary. I could use this dictionary in however way I want to, but our model form provides an easy kind of extraction. So we do brand form, pass in brand form, pass in that dictionary. It'll know how to extract the values and create a form instance for me. So again, it's kind of just like seamless, but there's some magic going on here. So we get a form instance, and then we want to basically validate the form. So if form.is valid, again, always good to error check, make sure we're inserting proper data into our database. We can just do form.save. And then let's say we want to redirect to the detail page. So we could do a redirect, which is a Django function, to what is it? Brand detail. And I think we want to pass it form.instance.id. I need to double check this. So redirect is something we need to import. Redirect from Django shortcuts. All right, so now our goal is when they come to the page, we show them a form via the get request. When they submit the form, it's going to be submitted as a post keep that in mind. And we'll actually capture the values via request.post, save the item to the database, and then redirect our user elsewhere. If there is an error, we might want to return something at least. So return HTTP response. You failed. Not a good error message, but I don't want to waste time with that right now. All right, so
I could be incorrect here on this, Ankur, but I think it should be brand detail instead of details.
Yep, thank you. Easy to kind of miss the name conventions. I'm glad you guys are checking me. So yes, we want to redirect to the brand detail page with a given ID. Let's see if this works or if I messed up some typos. Okay. So we need to create a templates file. That is something we simply do. So we have brand detail, brand list. We want to create a new file called brand form.html. Form.html. And that's just a naming choice I chose. You don't have to, prepend it with brand or anything, but always good to be consistent. So here, I'm going to borrow my code from here, go to my brand form. All right, so let's just review what we need to do for forms. So we want to create a form item. So let's have a H2, let's say H2. I had a value called action. And then here we want to insert our form. So again, we need a form element, open and close. Make sure you remember to put in a method, and this should be a post. If you don't put it there, it's not going to work as you expect it to. All right, so this form element is going to have within it, I'm going to use table because I always do. You don't have to, you could use a different rendering method. But here, I'm going to do form as table. Again, if you choose to do as paragraph, you do not need this rounding table elements. But I prefer as table just because it looks slightly nicer to me, but your choice. There's three options: as table, as paragraph, and as forget the third one because I never use it, but there's a third one if you want to read Django documentation. All right, we're going to add a button. Always remember to add a button for your forms, else your user can't actually submit. So we type submit. And we'll just say this will have the title of action. Okay, so we create our form. I am missing one thing here. Let's call on Jonathan Ray. What am I missing that I'm likely gonna know I'm missing in 5 seconds?
A donut?
I am missing a donut. I have not had a donut today. I did actually have a bagel, which is kind of like a donut, but not as gratifying. Aside from a donut, I need a CSRF token. I honestly, I'm not doing this for your purposes. I honestly forget half the time just because, I don't really think about it, but CSRF token, just you need it for Django's items. Django's purposes, they need this token for security purposes. You guys can read more about it, but just know that every form needs a CSRF token for Django's purposes. All right, cool. So I remember my token, I got my form, a button. All right, I think that's all I need. So let's actually test this out. I need a button probably, let's add a button on the brand list page. And this is going to be, let's put it down below. Let's use our HR. Let's create a button. So it's gonna be an A tag with a button inside of it. So if they click on a button, they should be taken to create a new brand. So I need an href, and then use Jinja URL. This URL will be called brand create, and this does not need any extra parameters. But now that I'm pointing to a URL, that reminds me, hey, I need to actually create a route for this, right? I never did that. So again, a lot of steps to remember. You don't necessarily have to do them all in order, but if you do them in order, you're less likely to forget. But in this case, I want to do something called brand, and maybe create will be that landing spot. So this will be the brand create page. Brand create will be the name of that route. And so I show a brand create page in my views. And of course, I did not call it brand create page. Okay, I think that's all the steps we need. Again, just to review, our URLs need to be added, our view handler, and our template. So those three things all need to kind of come together. For creating and updating, we also create forms. Model form is the preferred way to go just because it's so much quicker. But let's kind of refresh this page. All right, that's the works. Let's go back to our landing shop, landing page shop. All right, so car brands, let's click the new button. All right, cool, we have this form. That's, we didn't have to create that ourselves. Django's model form does that. So let's create a new brand. Let's go with Ford, icon URL. I'm not gonna bother with that. Can't just type in garbage. Let's see if I can make that blank. If not, I need to change my models. Year founded, 1908. I think that's their Model T, so they probably existed before that, but create. Nope, it says I gotta put something, well, nope. Skip on that. All right, I failed. Why did I fail? Do I actually need a URL? Is that what it's Ford? I didn't realize Django is this picky about it. Ford logo. I don't know if it does some URL validation. It shouldn't because it's just a char field. So I'm probably failing for another reason. But
Could it be your date field?
date field. Did I forget to add that? Where was I? Oh yeah, you are right. Thank you, Brian. Good catch. So yes, this needs to be a full date. You can't just put a year, but now we have an image. Let's see if this works. I failed. That's not good. Let's go to our window here. All right, so take a look at my terminal. We posted something. We get down here.
So Ankur, I have a question.
Yep.
In your views on line 38, I know Tom was saying that if you're gonna pass in like an ID, you need to commit equals false, I think, something like that, which I'm a little fuzzy on why we need that. Could that be the reason?
That could be the reason. So you're talking about sometimes we might want to pass commits equals false. This is required when you need to actually modify your instance before saving it. In this case, I don't have anything I need to do between the save, between basically like extracting the data from the form and saving it. So I can just do a save and form that instance, that ID should have what I want. So let's actually add some print statements just to validate what I'm assuming here. So form that instance should be the new ID. Yeah, my redirect could be my issue. I'm not sure if my syntax is correct there. But in this
Ankur,
case,
James actually had the issue. It was you need a return in front of that redirect.
Yes. Thank you guys. You guys answering these questions makes me feel really good that you guys are understanding Django here. So yeah, I need to return something out of this function. That is my bad. I was simply redirecting without actually returning the value there. So yeah, let's try this. Let's see if that fixes it. Go to create. So let's actually go to our detail page. Did I create multiple Ford items? All right, so I did create Ford, so that the creation succeeded, the redirect did not. So that's why I was getting that error message. So that's cool. Let's create one more. Let's go with GM or General Motors. And then I'm going to pass on this. Year founded. Let's go with 1899 to 101. Let's see if this works. Great. Cool. So again, we have no image because that was on a valid URL, but we were able to create this item and redirect. So I'm going to skip over the update case. I'm going to quickly go to nested. So let's do a quick nesting case just to kind of introduce that in our example. Again, we're not going to get through everything, but let's go to our URLs. For nesting, we generally prefer having nested routes also. Now, I don't have a great answer for this, but we're going to get away from this nesting when we get into Django as an API. But for now, I think this is the way we just prefer it. So we'll do with car type. And then let's say we want to see all the cars for that brand. So that'll be car brand detail. Now this is a design choice. You could have a landing spot that shows every car, make and model from every brand. Like that would be a different URL. But in this case, this location will show me only the cars for this brand. So that's the way I'm kind of organizing it. And let's say we want to see a brand detail. We'll probably have car ID here. So again, we can have multiple parameters. In this case, this URL is going to have brand ID and a car ID. That's totally fine. Just make sure we understand the names of them and how to extract the values. So this would be car brand list and then car brand detail. All right, so we added 2 new routes. Let's actually space this out. So let's say these are cars, these are brands. Okay, so I guess one choice here, you guys might have ran into this or thought about this. Well, I could technically show all my cars on my brand detail page, right? They're kind of associated, so I would not pull that against anyone if they decided, hey, my brand detail page should additionally show every car that's part of it. That makes sense to me. I'm going to break it out to a different route just to kind of have that separation. But usually, if I were doing this, I'd probably put the cars on the brand detail page, to be honest. Okay, let's create these items. Again, nested CRUD is just another layer on top of normal CRUD, so it's not anything too complicated. We just got to make sure we get the appropriate values here. So request object, and then we're going to get a brand detail or brand ID that we can use to extract all the cars. So brand detail page, let's do all cars for brand is going to be car.objects.all. I could do a filter. And then we want to match up the brand ID from the car with the brand ID that's being passed in. All right. So there are multiple ways we could do this. One way, just to kind of highlight it, we get the brand from the database. Do brand dot objects dot get. I want to wrap this in a try catch, but I won't right now. So brand ID, we get a brand, and then we can do simply like brand dot cars, right? Because that's, we have this field of cars from our foreign key relationship, right? So if you remember when we did a related name of cars, that is essentially giving us an imaginary or automatic field of cars from the brand. So there's two ways you can kind of extract the data. If you look at our views, honestly, I think this is kind of easier, I think, than kind of doing this filtering. So I'm actually just going to opt for brand.cars because that seems simple enough. But the other way works also. You're basically going through all the car records and matching up the brand IDs. So either way should work. Any questions on that? Do you guys kind of understand the two ways about going about getting the data we want? I'll take that as a yes. So we get brand cars. Let's put that into a data dictionary. I like to call it my data. Make it clear that's not your data, it's my data. All right, so we're going to go with, let's call cars in quotation. That'll be brand cars. We could even just pass the brand into our page and extract cars that way, but in that case, I don't really want to. And then we want to
Anchor.
Yep.
So is there any difference between brand.cars and brand.cars.all?
I always kind of get into trouble here. Do we need this all here? Yeah. We'll find out. So request, that's going to be a cars page. Car slash car list.html. All right, so I'm going to need to create a new template. Call that car list.html. Any other questions out there? I feel like I'm coding a lot and not really answering or asking for questions. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions. Please don't want to make this kind of wasteful, but all cars for brand. And now I'm thinking I might want to pass in the brand object. So let's actually switch gears here because I want the brand name on the car detail page. So instead of passing in brands.cars, I'm going to do just the brand. And you'll see why. So brand is just going to be the object I pass into my item here. So we'll do my data. And the reason I'm doing this, so I could actually show the brand name without having to kind of look it up again. So my data will be a dictionary. And then inside of my car list, now we should be able to show our brand name. So brand.name. And then it's going to be a list. We're going to do for all cars in, let's see, brand.cars. We need this .all here. I was looking this up yesterday because I was not sure about it either. It seems in Jinja, when you call a function, you don't need the parentheses if there's no parameters. That's something that tripped me up before. I wasn't sure about that. But again, this is the .all function. However, we don't need the parentheses there. Like for whatever reason, Jinja does not like that syntax. So you just do a .all, which is not a property, but it is a function that's being called here. So here we want to call car detail, car brand ID, and car ID equals car.id. All right, so we have access to brand. We also have access to car from this for loop. We got to pass in both parameters to car detail. We'll see that shortly. This will be car name. Okay, let's check out if this works. We want to go to car creates. All right, any questions of what we're doing here? All right. Brand detail page is failing. Okay. Good to read error messages. So brand detail page, I did this, I think. Okay, so we get an error. What could the error be? So we do brand ID, should be good. What's going on here? So we're going to brand ID 5. Why is this not working? So let's take a look at my terminal. We do get ID 5, so that's correct. The question is this get failing? Is this rendering car list? Do I have car list? I do have car list. So let's try to debug this quickly.
Do you have 5 brands or?
I do. Well, I'm on this page, right? I was just at that location. So I was at Ford or General Motors, ID 5. So we're not zero based here. So
Okay.
looks like I screwed something up in my detail page and I don't even know what I changed. So let's take a look. Maybe I was typing and coding the wrong thing. So brand detail page. Oh, I have 2 brand details, I think. Yes, I have 2 brand detail pages. It should be car detail page. Is that what I called it? No, I called it. All right, we're gonna wrap this up shortly and get you to your assessment, but brand detail page is not what I want. This is brand car list page. I don't even know what to call it anymore. All right, and then we also need to have a def brand car detail page, which we're not going to implement because we're running short on time. Want to get you to your assessment. So let's create a stub function request and pass. Not going to code that up. So let's see if that fixes it. Cool. All right, so we have that. If I go to slash car, okay, get another error. Let's figure that out. So we're getting into this. We get a brand ID. Our URL, just make sure, is slash car. That should show all the cars. Car brand list, brand car list page. Brand car list page. It gets in here. We should get a brand. So let's print out the brand value. Print brand. Okay. It's always good to debug. Refresh that. And my server's dead. Okay, let's see what our server spit out. So we got brand ID 4, that looks correct. We got Ford, that looks correct. So all this is working. What's going wrong here? I'm returning something, so that is not my issue. Car list HTML, is that correct? Car list, that looks fine. Any ideas, anyone? Would it be my template, something weird?
Anchor, do you use the right name tag in your HTML? The URL, I think the name of the URL is not right. The car create and the car detail.
Oh, you are right. I'm surprised. Oh, I guess, yeah, that I'm preventing my debug page from coming up. Thank you. Good catch there. So all cars brand Ford, there's nothing listed here. So that is a issue. So brand ID is brand ID, car ID is car ID.
Be brand.cars.all.
Yes, you guys are amazing. Yes, I needed cars here. So does that fix it? No. Yes, no. All right, so we do know brand.cars.
Did you add any cars to your Ford?
Good question. I guess I didn't. You're right. So I'm wasting time on something that is working correctly. So let's go to Chevy. Cool. Let's go to /car. So I didn't create a link for it. /car. All right. This is why I guess my try catch is kind of hurting me here because I'm not seeing the debug messages. So let's actually.
What you should either get rid of that, or you can instead specifically catch the brand does not exist except.
Oh, so car detail. All right. So I guess the try catch was hurting me there. So car detail does not exist. Where's car detail? It's in my templates.
Yeah, HTML URL.
Gotcha.
You're gonna have to fix your tabbing in your Python file where you just deleted your track set too.
Yeah, you might be right. So brand card detail page. No, brand card detail. I need a better naming scheme is what this is going to. So brand card detail. Nope, I called it car brand lists because of course. Car list. And that takes in only what am I doing? Sorry guys, not having a great day here. So this is what I'm trying to point to. Car brand detail ideally would take in two values, brand ID and car ID. So that is what I want here.
For me, when I get lost in the sauce, I have to go from URLs, copy and paste from URLs to views, copy and paste from views to basically my HTML templates. And then I know that I've got names that are pointing to the right place.
Yeah, again, it's easy to kind of get lost with all the strings that are supposed to be attached, but if you misattach one, that can kind of cause some headaches. So, okay, cool. We finally got it working. Thank you for you guys' assistance. Yeah, we needed the cars plural here. Cars plural there, and then also my URL lookup is bad. I guess looking at the Django error is much easier to find it. But now I should be able to click on this and go to the detail page for the cars, which we've not cleared up and not going to get there. But we did get some nesting in here, so hopefully that was kind of our goal here to introduce nesting of items. Again, nothing too crazy going on here. It's just adding more to a URL and more values to connect tracks so you get the data that you want. All right, with that, let's take a 6-minute break. Please be back at noon, and we're gonna go over the assessment, make sure everyone knows what's going on. That'll be like, it'll be 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes max, and then we'll get you to lunch and to your assessment. So let's take a quick break while we get the assessment kind of going, and then yeah, we'll release that to you guys.